Can you beat Pokemon Heartgold without any new moves? Level up moves? Never. TMs? Push them off the cliff. HMs? Trash. Well, not essentially. We do require them to progress through the game, but no HMs in battle. Rules are simple. If a Pokemon has less than 4 moves when I obtain it, the only moves it can learn is by leveling up. If a Pokemon already has 4 moves when I obtain it, that's it. Those are its final moves. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Our journey begins with the regular things, picking up the girl character, naming it, talking with mom, and heading straight for the lab. Now for our starter choice. I chose Totodile. Why, you may ask? Because the last time I played Soulsilver 10 years back, I used Cyndaquil. So for this video, it was between Totodile and Totodile. So I picked Totodile. His moveset is Scratch, Leer, Water Gun, and Rage. We run into our first rival battle and a few scratches did the trick. Now that we have acquired some balls, we can catch our second team member. Sentret and Rattata have very bad movesets, so I narrowed down to Pidgey and Caterpie. My ultimate choice was going to be Pidgey, but then it occurred to me, instead of Caterpie, which already has 3 moves, we can catch a Metapod who only has Harden. So when it evolves at level 10, we can have Poison Powder, Stun Spore, and the best of them all, Confusion. So it was decided Nevelin is welcome to the team. The only downfall of this idea is that we have to switch train Metapod until it evolves, because it literally has no damaging move. Yeah, this was painful. So I decided to beat the Sprout Tower. The Elder had 2 Bellsprouts which went down to a few scratches, and by the end of the Sprout Tower, Metapod was at level 8. Amongst all this, Cappy also leveled up and learned Water Gun. In the meantime, I also caught a Mareep because it has Thunder Shock and Thunder Wave. Give me Damn Sheep. A bit more grinding later, Metapod finally evolved. I was feeling pretty confident, so we go after Falkner. We started with Oogway, who does not have Thunder Shock yet, so I decided to spam tackles, but Pidgey's sand attack was very annoying. So I switched up into Butterfree, which took out Pidgey. Next was Pidgeotto. Butterfree was able to connect 2 confusions, almost dying in the process, but somehow survived. And cherry on top was that Pidgeotto got confusion, which means on each turn there is a 50% chance that it will hit itself. And guess what? It hit itself twice. Yeah, we got really lucky there. And this is 1 gym down. Next I headed for Azalea Town and stopped Proton from eating those slowpoke tails alone. He led with Zubat, which easily went down to a Water Gun and Scratch. Next he brought in Coughing, who kept missing Smog for some reason, so Oogway was able to Thunder Shock the hell out of it. And also he learned Thunder Wave, his final move. After this was out of the way, I immediately went for Bugsy, and boy was I overconfident. He led with Scyther and I scratched it, but then he used a U-turn and sent out Metapod. Cappy was able to land a scratch before fainting, so I brought in Oogway. A few Thunder Shocks in, he used a Super Potion. Amazing, but I paralyzed it and took it out. He brought in Scyther again and used U-turn again, killing Oogway in the process. My last hope was Nevelin. Confusion OHKO'd Kahuna. Finally, his Scyther came in and he used Quick Attack, which did half of my HP. I landed a Confusion in hopes of confusing it like Pidgeotto, but I guess that was just pure luck back then. Scyther healed because it has a freaking Citrus Berry. I barely survived a Quick Attack and poisoned it. I healed 2 more times and my next attack confused him. Let's go! I barely survived his final Quick Attack, and this is Bugsy down. And also, Oogway evolved into Flaffy. With the Hive Badge acquired, we do our second rival battle against Goop. That's his name. I forgot to mention, didn't I? Cappy took out his Ghastly, Butterfree poisoned Bayleaf. He kept on using Synthesis, which was very annoying. What the hell, Goop? But eventually, a few confusions in and Bayleaf was down. His last Pokemon was Zubat and Oogway was able to OHKO it with ease. We advanced towards the Elix Forest and to navigate through it, we need Cut. So I taught it to Cappy in exchange for Leer, because Leer is a pretty common move, which I can get from a bunch of Pokemon, so yeah. On Route 35, I caught a Ditto as a sacrificial Pokemon in battle, because you just can't go wrong with Transform. Bob. And I also caught a Nidoran M. The reason I didn't go for Nidoran F is because Peck is clearly superior than Scratch. And yeah, he can also learn a lot of HMs, which will be super handy. Our next challenge is Whitney, and boy, she has a thick milk tank. It has a base total of 490. 490? Seriously, Game Freak? She started with Clefairy and I had Patrick up front. He used Double Slap and Patrick's Poison Point ended up poisoning it. I switched up into Ditto. Ultimately, Clefairy went down to its Lunar Dance, and next was Miltank. Miltank already had full HP and PP, so Clefairy's Lunar Dance was pointless. Great work, genius. I bought in Evelyn who was able to set up a poison powder. Miltank immediately healed because of a freaking lumberry. What is with these berries? My god. Anyway, after almost surviving the next stomp, I set it up another poison powder. Next I bought in Oogway and very conveniently he was male, which meant that he is in love. Oogway was completely immobilized by Miltank, so I switched up into Patrick who lived through stomp and connected a double kick like a mad lad. And finally, Miltank was finished by poison. Let's go! Get lost, Whitney. Post beating Whitney, Nidoran evolved into Nidorino. After some crying, she handed us the plain badge. Next I used the squirt bottle and caught Sudowoodo because it very conveniently has rock throw. Fast forward, I did some grinding, got my Eevee from Bill at Goldenrod and made it to Ecruteak City. Now, Eevee is essentially useless in this playthrough, but I didn't realize this until some time. The original plan was to get an Umbreon, but he already knows 4 moves, which is just hilarious. Anyways, in Ecruteak, I immediately went after Morty, the ghost specialist. Patrick almost took down Ghastly, but then he healed. But after some pecking, Patrick took it out. Next was his Haunter, whose Dream Eater O-code Patrick. I switched up into Oogway and set it up a Thunder Wave, which paralyzed the Haunter. 3 Thunder Shocks in, Haunter was no more. Next was his buffed up Gengar. I tried Confusion, but he outsped Burfy and Hypnosis put her to sleep. I bought Birch in as a sacrifice so I can use Awakening on Nevlin. I was able to connect 1 Confusion, but then Shadow Ball was too much for Nevlin. I bought in Mampy as a sacrifice so I can heal Nevlin. And one thing I didn't realize here was that Morty's Gengar was almost out of moves. The only moves he had left was Hypnosis and a few Shadow Balls. And extremely conveniently, Shadow Ball has no effect on Eevee, which meant that the only possible thing Gengar can do is repeatedly put Mampy to sleep. In other words, it cannot kill a level 5 Eevee. Mampy was able to land a few Tail Whips when he finally died to Gengar's struggle. I switched up into Nevlin and a few confusions later, his Gengar and Haunter number 2 were down. Psybeam? Never. The MVP of this battle was definitely Eevee. I take back what I said earlier about Eevee being useless in this playthrough. He's a mad lad. With the fog badge acquired, we can now use HM Surf. Afterwards, I took down some trainers and made it to Olivine City. We climbed the lighthouse, and at the top, Jasmine tasks us to fetch some medicine from a famous pharmacy in Cianwood for the sick Ampharos. So I taught Surf to Cappy in exchange for Rage and surfed up to Cianwood. And relax, I won't use Surf in battle, okay? We surf up to Cianwood, and upon arriving, I realized that this place has a gym. I legitimately forgot that Chuck existed. So with zero preparation, we interrupt his shower and challenge him to a battle. He led with Primeape and I sent out Cappy, a Wargun in, and he switched up into Poliwrath. So I also switched up into Oogway who got O-code by a Focus Punch. So I bought in Nevlin and set it up Poison Powder. And then I switched up again, this time into Birch. A few low kicks in and he healed. So I bought in Mampy who was able to land a Tail Whip before getting O-code. Next I bought in Patrick and Poliwrath used Hypnosis before dying to Poison. Next was Primeape and I switched up into Nevlin to set up another Poison Powder. And finally, Patrick was able to crush his Primeape and this is 5 gym badges down. Outside the gym, we get our hands on the HM Fly. Only problem is that no one on my team can learn Fly. So I had to catch a Noctowl as a temporary Pokemon. We surf back to Olivine, deliver the medicine, and light is back on. Afterwards, I decided to go for Jasmine, but she has some real buffed up Magnemites, and I am somewhat under-leveled, so I decided to grind. And this is where Patrick comes into play. Part of the reason I caught Patrick in the first place was because he has low kick, which will be clutch against Jasmine. During this grinding phase, I also caught a Growlithe because we had no fire type in our team up till the 5th gym. Sadly, Growlithe only has Ember to begin with and he does not evolve into an Arcanine up till level 48. My god, why is that so high? Amongst all this, I decided to catch the red Gyarados. We take the red scale to Mr. Pokemon and trade it for an XP share, which will be very helpful to grind Growlithe. Afterwards, I decided to clean up Team Rocket's hideout back in Mahogany Town. We take on Petrel and Cappy was able to sweep his entire team with a few water guns and scratches. Next was Ariana, for which we team up with Lance and it was a fruitcake. Now that I was here in Mahogany, I thought we might as well take on Price before Jasmine. He led with Seal, so I switched up into Ampharos, a Thundershock in and he switched up into Piloswine. So I also switched up into Patrick who was able to connect 2 double kicks, or should I say quadruple kicks, before dying to Ice Fang. So I bought in Cappy and he used Water Gun. Piloswine healed with his goddamn Citrus Berry, then I used Water Gun twice, but then he healed again, this time with a Hyper Potion. Cappy Water Gunned again, but ultimately he died to his Mud Bomb. Next I bought in Nevlin, who was able to set up a Poison Powder because of outspeeding Piloswine, as I had given it a Quick Claw. I called in Darlin as a sacrifice to heal Cappy, who was able to take down Piloswine. Let's go! His next Pokemon was Dewgong, so I switched up into Ampharos, who was able to land 2 Thunder Shocks, leaving only a quarter of his health before dying to Aurora Beam. I bought in Cappy, scratched the Dewgong, and revived Oogway. Oogway took out Dewgong and he bought in his Seal, which was no problem for Ampharos. And this is the Glacier Badge acquired. At this point, I was very overconfident with my team, so I wasted no time and went back to Olivine to challenge Jasmine once again. He started with Magnemite and Patrick almost O-coded with Double Kick. He paralyzed me and healed on the next turn. The next Double Kick did more than half and another one did the trick. Next was Magnemite number 2, so I switched up into Oogway and paralyzed the Magnemite. And I also landed a few tackles which brought it to a very low HP. And then Patrick was able to finish him off. Our final Pokemon was Steelix, so I switched up into Cappy, whose Water Gun almost took it out. But then she freaking healed. But eventually Cappy was able to get the job done. 7 down, 1 more to go. Upon exiting the gym, I got a call from Professor Elm, who informs us that Team Rocket has taken over the radio tower in Goldenrod and we have to get rid of them. So I flew to Goldenrod and joined Team Rocket. All hail Giovanni. Well, I would have joined Team Rocket if Goop was not so nosy. WTF Goop? We take on Goop in Team Rocket's underground warehouse. Cappy takes out Golbat. Swoop almost took out Meganium before dying to Petal Dance. So I brought in Patrick, who was able to take out Meganium and Magnemite. Next, Oogway took down his Haunter. His last Pokemon was Sneasel, so I healed up Swoop and he was able to burn the Sneasel. Afterwards, I got the key card and took on their admins. First was Proton. Not worth my time. Next was Ariana. She led with an Arbok but a few confusions in. She switched up into Murkrow. So I also switched up into Cappy, who swept the rest of our team of Murkrow, Vileplume, and Arbok. And finally, we take on Archer. Oogway takes out Houndour with a few Thunder Shocks. Cappy extinguishes his Houndoom. Nevlin takes down Coughing, and that takes care of Team Rocket. Moving on to our final gym battle against Claire. And I was not ready for this fight. I had nothing good against dragon types. So I spent about an hour to try and find someone I could catch who has a good moveset against Claire. Just then, I remembered the red Gyarados we caught earlier. For some reason, I never saw its moveset when I caught it. And surprisingly, it has 2 dragon type moves. What are the odds? And Bite. I'm gonna be very honest, playing with these moves has made me realize how superior of a move Bite actually is. I decided to grind Barb up to level 40 because Claire has some buffed up Pokemon. Fast forward, we push a Weirdo and take on the Dragon Mother. She led with Gyarados and a few Thunder Shocks in. She used full restore, so I healed as well and took it out. Barb took down Dragonair number 1. Next I switched up into Cappy and healed Barb, who then took down Dragonair number 2. Our last Pokemon was Kingdra, so I set it up Poison Powder, and then Barb almost did the job but she healed again. So I too healed and Barb landed the final blow. Then I stepped up to the Dragon's Den because someone is a crybaby. And this, my friends, is 8 gym badges acquired. Before the Elite Four, I decided to fly back to Ecruteak and defeat all the Kimono girls. Barb took down Umbreon. Next was Espeon, but guess what? I have Bite. Flareon, Jolteon, and Vaporeon was super easy and that takes care of the Kimono girls. I made my way to the Bell Tower and after a lot of mazes, I made it to the top. So the reason I wanted to catch Ho-Oh before the Elite Four is that it has a very good moveset. We have 2 Fire type moves, Sacred Fire and Fire Blast, and a Psychic type move, Extra Sensory. Cherry on top, I finally have someone on my team who can learn HM Fly. Freak you, Noctowl. In the box, right now. Next I stepped up to Tojo Falls, got my Moonstone and evolved Patrick into a Nidoking. Advancing towards the Pokemon League, we take on Goop one last time in the Victory Road. He started with Sneasel and it was burned to ashes. Same happened to his Magneton. Next was his Haunter, so I bought in Nevlin, who took it out. Next was Golbat, so I bought in Ampharos and a few Thunder Shocks were enough. His Meganium was OHKO'd by Fox and Barb's Bite was too much for Alakazam. Bite Supremacy. And finally, we go after the Elite Four. First up we have Will Smith. Zatu almost went down to Sacred Fire but then he healed. But the next Sacred Fire was a crit. Next was Slowbro and I bought an Ampharos. A few Thunder Shocks in, it was down. Ho-Oh took down Jinx. and then Barb took down Exeggutor by a few bites. His final Pokemon was Zatu number 2, who OHKO'd Ampharos, so I bought in Fox, who took it out. Next up was Koga. First up, Ho-Oh took down Ariados and Fortress. Next up was Muck. I used Extra Sensory, who did decent damage to Muck, but then Muck used Gunk Shot, which did big damage to Ho-Oh. Yeah, Muck also healed with a berry. I bought in Nevlin to finish the job, but he fully restored. Yeah, I decided to paralyze the Muck by using Stun Spore. Next I bought in Nevlin, who was able to take out Muck. Koga's next Pokemon was Crobat, so I bought in Oogway, who almost took out Crobat before dying to poison. So I bought in Cappy to finish his job. His final Pokemon was Venomoth. Barb was able to take it out with ease. Next up is Bruno. He led with Hitmontop, who went down to 2 Sacred Fires. Cappy OHKO'd Onyx. Next up was Hitmonchan, who almost went down to Extra Sensory, but then he healed. But that couldn't stop us, and Hitmonchan was down. Next up was Machamp, so I bought in Barb, who did half of its health, and then Fox took it out. His last Pokemon was Hitmonlee, who went down to a few Extra Sensories, and that is Bruno down. Bruno was definitely the easiest Elite Four member. Our final Elite Four member is Karen. She led with Umbreon, who went down to Poison. Next was her Houndoom, and this was bad news. I had to spam healing items in order to beat the Houndoom. Cappy did some damage but got OHKO'd. Nevlin's Quick Claw was clutch here because it allowed me to outspeed the Houndoom and set up Poison Powder. After this, I kept spamming some healing items and Houndoom died to poison. This is a very shit strategy, but this was the only way. Now that I'm realizing this, I am very underleveled. Next was Vileplume, which was OHKO'd by Fire Blast. Her next Pokemon was a Murkrow, who went down to a few Thunder Shocks, getting paralyzed along the way. Finally, her ace was Gengar, and it was no problem for Fox. And now, it was time for the champion matchup. You have to go against Lance the Dragon Mother. And immediately I realized that I am underleveled. Very underleveled. Look at that Gyarados. And then look at Oogway. Yeah, he's small. He led with Gyarados, I led with Oogway. 2 Thunder Shocks and Gyarados was down. Next up was Dragonite number 1. Barb managed to do half of his HP, but then it fainted. So I bought in Cappy as a sacrifice and healed Barb. Barb was almost about to take it out, but then he used Citrus Berries. Because of this challenge, my hatred for these freaking berries has just increased. I hate berries. Obviously, Barb fainted at the next turn, so I bought in Ho-Oh, who took down Dragonite. His next Pokemon was Aerodactyl, who got poisoned by Patrick's Poison Point, which was very clutch to be honest. So as the Aerodactyl was slowly dying to poison, I brought in Barb and decided to heal my other team members. Next up was Dragonite number 2, so I brought in Ho-Oh, who nearly survived the thunder and landed a Sacred Fire. The best part about the Sacred Fire, it left Dragonite burned. With Dragonite slowly burning to its death, it was a perfect time to heal my team members. But my happiness was short-lived because he full restored. Pain is all I feel at this point. I healed up Ho-Oh and a few extra sensories in, Dragonite was down. Next up was another Dragonite, so I bought in Barb. And at this point, I was out of PP for Dragon Rage. Perfect. So all I can use was Bite. A few bites in and Dragonite was at a very low HP, so I bought in Ho-Oh to finish the job. His final Pokemon was Charizard. I kept on spamming healing items on Ho-Oh to try and beat Charizard, and we actually made it to a very low HP, but then he again full restored. Yes, but eventually, a few Fire Blasts and extra sensories later, Charizard was down. And that does it. We beat Pokémon Heartgold without any new moves. Our final team consists of Nevlin the Butterfree, Cappy the Feraligatr, Oogway the Ampharos, Barb the Gyarados, Patrick the Nidoking, Fox the Ho-Oh. A team who still has Scratch and Leer. This was such a fun challenge. I had a great time. I hope you enjoyed. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.